Kim Pate is the executive director of the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies, which offers assistance to women and children affected by the justice system. She joins us now. Ms. Pate, what do you see in this bill that disturbs you?
Well, what we see is that, again, there is no costing. The government went down on the fact that it refused to provide all the resource implications for the bills that were before the House at the time. I think that Canadians are entitled to know that. The government has a fiduciary obligation to let Canadians know. They're also saying that it's going to create safer communities. In fact, we know that's not true. At the same time as we're seeing United States retreating from these positions, several United States going bankrupt as well, I think what Canadians really wanted was a safe and secure settings, but also they want to have a secure economy. And this is not what we're going to see from this bill. In fact, the Parliamentary Budget Officer's costing of just one bill that was passed in the last session said that would be between $5 and $10 billion. So we're looking likely at tens of billions of dollars, much of which will be at the expense of provinces and territories, as well as the federal government, and no costing. And I think Canadians want money for pensions, they want money for education, for social services, for health care. They don't want to be seeing all of those resources sucked out into prisons. As well, we're told that we need more mandatory minimum sentences and less discretion for judges. Quite the opposite. We know that, in fact, for sexual offenses, predominantly those are committed by people who are known to the victims. So we're, in fact, seeing both the pulling away of resources to assist victims and the likelihood that those who are most marginalized will end up more likely end up in prison. So we're proposing that, in fact, the government, before they even pass the bill, but even if they pass the bill, because the rumor is they're going to ram it through Parliament, not even send it to committee, that there be an amendment that requires a costing and that all of the provinces, territories and the federal department sign off on what the costs will be so that parliamentarians and Canadians can know and make informed decisions about what those government tax dollars will be spent on.
This government is telling us that if we are tougher on crime, you and I will be safer. Are they not right?
If that was, I'm sorry for interrupting, if that were true, the United States would be the safest place in the world, and they would not be going bankrupt at this stage. We would not see the state of California, for instance, 3 times being ordered to release tens of thousands of prisoners because they were going bankrupt and because they were violating human rights. And in fact, the prisoners were being held in what was determined to be by their own courts cruel and unusual, places of cruel and unusual punishment. We have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms that protects both victims and those who are perpetrators. And we need to ensure that we uphold the law and that we provide those resources. In fact, what we're likely to see is more and more people ending up in prisons, and prisons aren't the shelters battered women need. They aren't treatment centers for people with mental health issues. We certainly know that from what happened to Ashley Smith. They certainly aren't drug addiction centers, and nor do those who work in the prisons want to see them increasingly housing those who are most marginalized instead of those from whom we do require protection. Judges are in the best position when they're weighing the evidence to determine what's needed for victims, what's needed for those who are perpetrating crime, and instead we're taking more of that discretion away from the very people who hear all the facts and have the jurisdiction and the authority and should have the responsibility of making those decisions.
There are very many middle-class families, middle-class adults in this country who have never truly bumped up against the justice system. And to them, punish the crime sounds like the kind of thing you do with your child. This is how you treat people. What do you do when you talk to people who don't know what it's like to have a perpetrator in your family?
Well, in fact, we talk about how many people have mental health individuals in their families with mental health issues. And many people do. They often don't publicize it because there's a stigma. Oftentimes, in fact, we know that people have experienced some form of victimization. And when you talk about would you want to see increasingly, whether it's your child, as in Ashley Smith's case, being criminalized for doing something that when you were a youth you would be corrected, expected to pay back, expected to move on and contribute to the community. Most people will say yes, that's what they want. If you ask a simple question though and say if someone does something wrong, should they go to jail, they'll also say yes. And what I hear from people, whether it's in my own community, whether it's in my family, whether it's in communities that I'm visiting and speaking, where I'm doing speaking engagements, always I'll hear people saying they want to see a much more robust support for those who are most marginalized. They want to see fewer people in prison who have mental health issues. They want to see prison reserved for those who are truly dangerous. That's not what we're likely to see with this bill. We're likely to see those resources sucked out of our communities, and I don't think any Canadian, any middle-class Canadian, any Canadian is thinking, by putting this bill in place, I might actually put in jeopardy my pension, I might put in jeopardy childcare for my grandchildren, I might put in jeopardy the health services that I take for granted, I might put in jeopardy the access to any kind of post-secondary education for future generations of even middle-class children. So I don't think people are thinking that way yet. That's what's happened in California, that's what's happened in other places in the United States, and it's why they're retreating from these positions. We don't need to go there. We can learn from those mistakes, and we can listen to those people who have had experience and look at the evidence, not just continues to say, pshaw to the evidence, forget it. It's a knee-jerk reaction that is designed to encourage people to believe this is what they need. And in fact, current laws already provide the same protections that are being discussed right now.
Kim Pate is the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies. Thank you very much, Ms. Pate.
Thank you.